We are getting ready for another snowstorm. Can you believe it? I cannot. Crazy, crazy spring is arrived. It's the first day of spring, and we have another nor'easter on the way for tomorrow. So I don't think it's going to be as bad as the last one, but it's coming. So that's the deal. We have a great show for you today. More on that in just a second. I do want to say, don't forget you can follow the show on Twitter. This little thing right here, and hello to everybody streaming at home as well. But you can follow the show at Joppa Afternoons on Twitter. That is at Joppa Afternoons, so make sure you tune into that. I'll help answer any questions if you have questions for any of our guests, that sort of thing. So make sure you do that. I know last time, actually, I should apologize. I got some questions, and I guess I lost focus halfway through. I was very into our conversation, and I forgot to answer some of the questions that were on here. But I'll try to do a better job at that of monitoring Twitter, and we can, if you have any questions for our guests, we can do that. So that is at Joppa Afternoons on Twitter. On that note, we have a great guest today, and it's actually a little bit poignant as the nation has seen another school shooting today. But her name is Julia Tiernan, and you may remember last week I talked to you a little bit about the walkout, the school walkout that they had here in Newburyport. And, well, long story short, we have the woman here, the young woman who organized that and was kind of the spokesperson for it. And, well, I'm going to learn all about that stuff here in just a couple minutes with Julia Tiernan of Newburyport High School. So I'm very excited about that. I know sometimes our guests are, I try to make them as relevant to everybody as possible, whether it be sports, music, theater, whatever. We'll try to ask questions of those people that can relate to everybody so everybody can kind of relate. And I think this is a topic, of course, that everybody can relate to and affects everybody. So Julia Tiernan is going to join us in just a moment from Newburyport High School. And yeah, so you know what? Let's do that. We'll take our first break here. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Happy spring, even though it doesn't feel like it. And when we get back, we'll talk with Julia Tiernan. Excited about that. Should be fun. So keep it here. We will be right back. My name is Drew Moholland. It is Afternoon Drive on Joppa Radio. All right, and welcome on back to Afternoon Drive here on Joppa Radio. My name is Drew Moholland. Thank you so much for starting your early afternoon here on a Tuesday with us on Joppa Radio. This is Afternoon Drive, and as mentioned, we have a great guest on hand today, Julia Tiernan, who organized the, you probably read it in the paper, or maybe you drove by it, I'm sure you heard about it though, the Newburyport High School walkout there. It actually was the day after the nationwide website, because believe it or not, we had some weather, nationwide walkout I should say, but believe it or not, we had some weather issues that seem to be throwing a wrench into everything these days. But Julia, hello, welcome aboard, and thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So you organized this walkout, and Go for it, David. You can reach right in. Producer David, making sure we're good here. So you organized this walkout, and tell me what goes into that. I mean, it's first of all, it's obviously it came right after the Parkland shooting.
Yeah.
And first of all, what made you do it, and how did this all come about?
Well, I don't want to take all the credit for it. It was a huge collaborative effort between the students and the administration. Big shout out to Emma Gimbrere, Margaret Denner, Emily LaLiberty, Molly LaLiberty, all of those people. There was a lot of us kind of putting in our voices, talking with the administration, meeting with teachers, meeting with other students, kind of working out the details, kind of figuring out what we wanted to do, because I know that a lot of schools had a 17-minute moment of silence, and we thought that it would be better to, instead of have silence, sort of make our voices heard and have people give speeches and stuff like that. So that was a big thing to make sure that the administration had our, they were supporting us, and we made sure that they were on board with it before we went forward with anything too crazy.
What it seemed like you guys, first of all, had a great turnout. Was like the whole school there, it seemed like?
I'm not sure that was the whole school, but we did have a good amount of students support us, which was really, really cool to see. And
of course it comes, I'm kind of interested. I mean, here's a day where we have another shooting in Maryland, 3 people critically hurt, and obviously it's unfortunately it's timely to have you on. But it does seem like these keep popping up. What is it about this time around, you think, that, I mean, it seems like every time these things happen, it's attention to it for a couple days, and then it goes off the radar. It seems like there's a real effort nationwide to make sure this stays on the radar, whether it be in politicians in Washington or whatever the case, but there's a real effort to keep this front and center right now.
I think that the kids in Parkland sort of took the movement. Our generation has been growing up in this kind of era of violence, which is really sad to think about, but it is the state of the nation, and I think that the students in Florida kind of just decided that this was their time to sort of say they've had enough, and they've been just living through this time of this happening over and over again with nothing being done. So I think that they decided that they did not want another school to experience what they did, and it was kind of the final straw, and they thought that they would be the voice that kind of led this like revolution to sort of fix the problem in our country.
And you guys at Newburyport made sure you did it, even though you didn't have the chance to do it when everybody else did on that last Wednesday, because you guys were canceled on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, we had an overwhelming amount of support, which was really cool. And I know a lot of people were worried about whether we were going to do it if we had a snow day, and we were adamant on still having it no matter what, because we thought that it was a really important thing to show that our school stands against gun violence and that kind of thing, and just kind of advocating for safety in schools.
And there were several towns and cities around here who did do that the next day. I think Billerica was another one.
Yeah.
That's just one that came to mind. But
I know Amesbury too.
Too. Yeah. I mean, was this just kind of a Newburyport thing, or did you see all that going around in other communities as well?
I mean, I did hear from other schools. I did not really see anywhere like social media or anything like that, but I know that there was some, at least to a degree, some support in other schools. I know that our school, we had a really great turnout, which was cool to see. I know some other schools I heard in, not necessarily in New England, but I know in other states there was maybe like only 1 or 2 kids from each school that was participating, but I think it was really cool to see that they still supported it no matter what. They didn't let kind of peer pressure or anything silence their voice, and that they made sure that they still advocated for what they believed in.
So what is your first reaction on a day like today when you hear, before you even know what the end result is, and hopefully nobody passes away from this, but we are hearing that's 3 critical in that Maryland shooting. What's your first reaction when you hear gunshots again at another school?
I mean, at this point, it used to be kind of like shocking, really scary, but I think at this point it's more tiresome and sort of just depressing almost to see that as much as what's being done, like there's so much being done, but it's just still not enough to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. So I think that, like, I don't really know much details about what happened today, but I think that, like, it's just kind of sad to see that even with all the advocacy, all of the sort of just social media, like, outpouring of support and outpouring of, like, demand for reform and that kind of thing, I think it's just sad to see that it's still happening.
And again, we're talking with Julia Tiernan. She it was one of the organizers, made sure to give credit to several others, but one of the big organizers of the walkout at Newburyport High School last week, the walkout for stricter gun measures. And you were one of the ones that was up there talking, right? You had the did you guys have, you had a nice setup though with like a microphone and everything?
Yeah, that was due to the support of the administration. They helped us with getting a microphone set up and getting a podium and all that kind of thing. It was really nice to see that they were on our side and sort of helping us out and making sure that it was really respectful and well organized. They didn't want anyone to be in danger. We had police, which was really good to see that they were all supporting us, which was really cool. So yeah, we had a great setup. It was awesome because we had backing from the administration.
So teachers there and everything too?
Yeah, we had a few teachers out. I know that some of them were unable to because of classes that they had to keep running, because we did walk out during class. But I think that there was an overwhelming support, not necessarily just from people walking out, but afterwards coming up to me, coming up to other people who helped organize it or were participating and sort of giving their words of support.
That is good, because if all the teachers are being a bit difficult in that regard, that can make these things a little bit tougher, right? You didn't really feel too much resistance in that regard?
No. I think that we had a lot of teachers come to the meetings, the initial meetings we had, to sort of voice our concerns and like voice our idea that we really wanted this to happen at Newburyport High School. And it was really cool to see that. It was a lot of teacher support, a lot of administration support, parent support, and student support.
Well, that is very good. So I mean, you have that set up. When I first heard it, I'm picturing you out there with like a one of the blowhorns yelling into this thing, and I'm like, wow, they have a microphone and a whole audio setup. That's so I was wondering how that happened. So that's interesting. What else went into this? I mean, I know that schools across the nation did this. I know Boston obviously had people walk up to Beacon Hill on the day before, the Wednesday. We'll talk about organizing an event like this, just even logistically, because I know that part's not easy either. Getting everybody to walk out of school at the same time. Difficult or pretty smooth?
I was really impressed with how smooth the whole operation was. We had support from the administration from the moment we even considered having this event happen, and I know that it was kind of last minute considering it was only a month into a national walkout was organized only a month after that shooting in Parkland, but we had a lot of time to kind of go back and forth. We had an initial meeting with any students that were interested. We invited them to come, and there was just a group of us initially who were saying, we really want this to happen at our school. What can we do to get this to happen? So we had a meeting that was open to all students who wanted to voice their ideas or opinions on how they wanted this to go. So we had that, and there was a lot of teachers there. The administration came and took notes and sort of voiced their concerns and their questions, and we had a few meetings back and forth with just a few students and the administration, sort of even walking outside, looking, getting a good scope, because we were going to originally walk out onto the field, but there was a lot of snow, so we ended up moving it to the teacher parking lot, which worked really well in the end. And we kind of logistically going back and forth, emails, meetings, all that kind of thing in a very quick amount of time, sort of just back and forth day to day, that kind of stuff. It was very quick, but it was managed very well. Yeah,
and it's not the easiest thing to kind of be in the spotlight of these things. And I noticed you're, well, one, obviously here, very comfortable public speaking. Do you... And you do have to be kind of the person, though, that's willing to talk about these issues. I mean, I've had people in here that, when these things have happened, we've brought them up, and they really don't want to get into it just because it touches on, if you're not well informed about it or just not something you feel strongly about it either way. I mean, everybody feels strongly about school shootings, but as far as getting into gun rules and all that stuff, it's obviously something that you feel very passionate about. Where does that come from, I guess, besides the fact that everybody is offended by school shootings?
I think that the fact that I am a high school student and I've been growing up into sort of being lulled into the idea that this is normal, and that it's just not necessarily normal, but something that's just unavoidable. We could never have seen it happening. Like, we could never have seen it coming. This person didn't show any signs or anything before, like, they came into the school, like, all that kind of stuff, just hearing it over and over again and really just being sick and tired of trying to accept it as a fact and sort of thinking that I want to be able to say that I did something to help bring this to an end. And so even if it's just on a small community level, just kind of making sure that I'm not sitting back and letting my classmates be put in danger. I just don't think I can stand to let that happen.
And you are, what year are you, Julia?
I'm a senior in high school.
You're a senior. Yes. So, again, Julia Tiernan, she was one of the young women behind the walkout here at Newburyport last week. And again, on a day today where we have another shooting in Maryland. Kind of a very broad question, but what is the atmosphere like? Because I do feel like it's changed a lot. I'm 31 now, so I'm however many years ago that was for high school. But we were post Columbine.
Yeah.
A couple other ones I think too. But it was still kind of early in the school shooting.
Yeah.
The big ones when it became, like you said, seemingly almost too much like the norm. I do feel like it is people are a bit more desensitized to it now, and which is interesting to see the Parkland kids show up. And what is the sense in the schools? I mean, is there a 100% safety, for instance, at Newburyport High School, or are you always kind of, is there ever an eye of maybe more reporting of oddness? I guess it's kind of a broad question, but as far as being safe in school, what is the level as a senior in high school who's fresh off 4 years of this?
I mean, that's definitely a really great question. I mean, now we're not just post-Columbine, we're post-Parkland, post-Sandy Hook, post-Orlando, like all of these different, not even school shootings, but just mass shootings in our country. I think that I used to be very afraid, and I think that I know that Newburyport is a very safe community, and that obviously didn't stop Parkland, which was, again, a very safe community, and I think that now, I used to come to school in fear, especially a lot last year it was getting sort of to the boiling point, very heated discussion, and I think that at this point, I just need to accept, I mean, it's horrible to have that sort of nagging in the back of your mind all the time, but you can't really let it control you, and you should say that you can't let it control you, and I think that it shouldn't. And I think that people should be trying to do more to sort of banish that from people's minds. I think that we should be doing more so that people don't have to let that sit back there and sort of stew, and I think that that's just not something that should be accepted anymore. And
I was thinking that because, I mean, you generally, there are days when you have woken up and, maybe post shootings, and, it's kind of, it's jarring to even get up and go to school. I always think about that after these shootings because there's, millions of kids across the country who have to get up that next day and go into those classrooms. And I can't imagine that being the easiest thing after a Parkland or any of these school shootings. I can't imagine that being easy. And obviously you do feel a bit rattled at times. So it's interesting to get that perspective. As far as, are there any big changes? Like I know you didn't obviously go to school when, decade plus when I was going to high school, but have you seen any changes in recent years? Maybe even since you were a freshman. Do they talk about this more? Teachers, whatever? Big changes on your plate that you've seen? Yeah,
we have actually had some new security measures put in place in our school, not necessarily for shootings, but just for sort of general safety. We do have a new lockdown drill program. We have the ALICE program implemented in Newburyport High School now, which is we used to have just sort of secure in place lockdown where we would go into the classrooms and lock the doors and sort of just sit there and wait for it to pass and wait for them to tell us it's safe to come out. And now the ALICE program is this new program that's being put in a lot of schools to sort of help not necessarily just sit there and wait for it to be over, but to sort of advocate for your individual safety and the safety of your classmates. And I think it's really cool that our school has put that in place. I mean, it's sad that we have to have any program at all for that kind of thing, but I think it's really great that Newburyport has sort of put a positive foot forward to sort of like prevent this kind of thing from happening and like sort of make sure that our students feel more safe in schools, because I know I've definitely talked to a few people, especially close friends, who say that they definitely felt safer after that program was put in our school. So what's the difference between, because I do remember that we used to have drills like that too, where you're locked down and whatever, the doors are locked and maybe you'd go to a part of the room where you couldn't be seen. But what's the ALICE program? How does that differentiate itself? Well, we originally used to have just like secure in place lockdowns where we would just sit there and sort of lock the door and cover the glass part of the door and make sure that no one saw us. But the ALICE program, ALICE is an acronym. I'm not exactly 100% don't remember what it stands for, but it's a lot more focused on the safety of the students and less of just making sure that they get whoever's a threat in the building out. I think that it's more focused on like making sure you're prepared mentally as well as physically for that kind of experience, which no one should ever have to have. But if it does come to, like, if that experience happens in our school, then people are definitely more prepared to feel safe and feel less stressed for that kind of thing. Yeah, interesting. Again, Julia Tiernan joining us. We're talking about the walkout that she helped organize last week at Newburyport High School, the walkout for stricter gun control measures. And again, we're talking about this on a day when there's another school shooting in Maryland with 3 people seriously hurt. So unfortunately, it is a very timely conversation. Julia, let's do this. We'll take one quick break here. Our first break. The show flies along here, so I'm going to make sure I do these.
Quick little music break. We will be right back. We'll talk a lot more. I would like to know when we get back what the teachers, if the teachers have changed in the classrooms over the years, and maybe more willing to talk about these things. So we'll get into that when we get back. My name is Drew Moholland. This is Afternoon Drive on WJOP Radio. Keep it here. We'll be right back.
Broken in the same place. Your break is a lens that you look through. Mine is a window you stare into. You to see it, and I want you to know, but your lens is like a mirror. You're all mirror and smoke, and the closer I get, the harder I choke. Spoken words hang in the air. They follow me around. They tangle in my hair. As I sleep, I pick their letters from my clothes. But I don't know how to form them, these words, and the meaning changes. The feeling rearranges. Broken in the same place, the window.
All right, welcome on back to Afternoon Drive here on WJOP Radio. My name is Drew Moholland. We're joined by Julia Tiernan, one of the organizers of the school walkout at Newburyport High last week. You guys did it the day after the much of the nation did, because of weather here locally. And Julia, we have the big nationwide walkout, but the rally Saturday. I know you keep an eye on these things, even though it's not always happening here in Newburyport thing. But it really, the eyes of the nation are certainly talking about this and looking at these rallies, and just your thoughts on this weekend's event as well. Probably going to be even more poignant after another shooting this week.
Definitely. Yeah, there's I know that there's a regional march/rally in Boston on the 24th. I'm not sure the exact details, time kind of thing of that. And there's also a national one in DC. I'm not sure exactly the details. I wish I could go, but I'm actually busy this weekend. But I know that there is going to be a huge rally in Boston. I'm sure there'll be a great turnout. I've gone to a few. I went to the Women's March last year.
Oh, did you?
In Boston, yeah. So there was a huge turnout there. So I'm hoping that there will be another great turnout this year for that.
That was quite a scene.
Yes, it was. It was nice to go and sort of, I brought my camera and did a little documenting, which was really cool to see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll have it could probably turn out very similar to that if I had to imagine. I guess depending on weather does kind of influence these things, as you learned. What is that like, actually? I mean, I know it's not the point of these things, but having to reschedule these things when a big snowstorm comes in, that's not exactly fun, is it?
It's a little frustrating, but we just roll with it, kind of take it as it goes.
You sick of winter yet? We have another nor'easter coming.
Very much sick of winter. I'm ready for it to be spring.
Well, it's officially spring today.
Yeah,
I don't know. Does it not feel like it to you? No. Again, Julia Tiernan joining us. So I wonder, Julia, before the break I mentioned wanted to get into this a little bit. When I was in high school, we're talking a decade plus now, a little bit, well over a decade plus now, we never talked about this. School shootings was just not something. You saw it on the news, but you came to class the next day, and it was like, you would not know that anything had happened in that regard. There was almost an effort to go out of your way not to talk about it and move on with life. Is that still the case today?
I feel now that it's very much the opposite. I think that because it's become such a commonplace issue in our country, it's kind of the forefront of like political discussions, just national conversations, that I think that it's practically impossible not to bring it up, even if it's not student-teacher conversation, but just kind of student to student having talks about it like pretty much every day, that kind of thing. It's like it's fairly unavoidable at this point. Do you guys,
because you had mentioned, I mean, after a lot of these shootings, it is very tough to even get up and go to school and wonder about your safety some days. And I assume that after these mass shootings, it is certainly the next day and the week immediately following can be even more difficult. Is it something, do you feel like you can talk to teachers about this? Is it more of a thing you talk to family members to? Is it kids? Do you rather talk to your student peers about it? How does that work? I mean, it's probably more of a personal question, I guess. Maybe everybody deals with it differently. But.
Yeah, everyone definitely deals with it differently, but I think that now it's become such a large part of just school culture, like just the education culture in our society, that I think that teachers know that no matter what, that even if it doesn't involve political views, that they still are sort of not obligated necessarily, but feel that they probably should be engaging in this conversation. And I know that I've definitely had conversations with teachers, like guidance counselors, advisors, like my civics and government teacher. The whole class has had a few conversations about it, just because it's such at the forefront of the American government right now that it's pretty much unavoidable.
Yeah, and what about like on a day after Parkland, like you're in that first class of the day, like what's the atmosphere in that class? Is that the first conversation in pretty much every class that morning?
Yeah, I think that because of the effects of social media nowadays too, especially, that's such a huge part of like our culture now. I think that it was definitely a very like sober sort of mood, especially in our school. I know that having talked with many people, that morning it was just a very sad, sort of somber mood, and I know that it was just kind of one of those events that's so big and so widely publicized that people just can't stop talking about it.
And I'm sure that, I mean, what else do you talk about if you're a high school senior? I mean, when something like that happens, I'm sure you're talking about it with all your friends, and that's really all you talk about, right? For at least the next few days. I mean, that can be draining, really.
It is, yeah. It's just kind of like, especially social media, like there's such a flood of not even sad, but positive, like messages of hope, prayers, like that kind of thing. Yeah. And even seeing that type of thing, pictures of the victims and stuff, is very like upsetting. But it's sad to think that like you have to just dismiss it and kind of keep going. Not necessarily dismiss it, because obviously you want to honor these people who have lost their lives to this kind of senseless event. But I think that just kind of understanding that you can't let all of these news, because if you listen and read every single horrible news story today, you're just really it's just going to get you down, and like not necessarily being unaware of what's going on, but acknowledging that it's hard to keep moving on when there's so much happening in the world. Like you just have to kind of be aware of that.
And you probably, when you see those pictures, I would immediately think that maybe one of the things that does make it hard is seeing somebody your age, how easily that really could be you. I mean, I'm sure every high school kid thinks about that these days, right? Mm-hmm. It could happen anywhere.
Yeah, I think that there's a major part of the Parkland shooting, I feel like, is that it was a very large school, so there was a lot of social media posts from the students during the shooting, which doesn't seem to happen that frequently, which is surprising, but I know that there was a lot of like Snapchat videos, Instagram tweets, like all this kind of stuff coming out as it was happening, because it was very scary to see that, because I could picture any single one of my friends saying that or texting me what they said or sending me a Snapchat like that. So it's really scary to just kind of put yourself in the shoes of these people who had to go through such a horrible experience at such a young age. It's really, really scary.
Yeah, and a lot of these shootings are happening in these nice communities. I think a lot of people think a lot of times that it's mental health issues and maybe in the tougher communities, but that's not the case. It happens in every community, and going all the way back to Columbine, and it's I think a lot of people, just anybody can relate to that sort of thing. You've talked a little bit about the measures that you've put into place, the ALICE program, and which is new. When did that start? Has that been around the whole time you've been in high school?
We really started talking about it this year. The last few years of high school, we've had more security measures put in. We've had our front door is now locked with a buzzer, so you have to be buzzed in by the front office with a camera so they can see who it is coming into the school.
So even that's different from when you were there?
Yeah, that was put in, I believe, my sophomore year. I know we didn't have it as freshmen, but we did have it as sophomores.
No metal detectors or anything, right?
We do not have metal detectors at our school. We do have security cameras now. We used to have a few near the doors, but now we have them in the halls everywhere. We have them in a lot more places, so it's easier to see who's kind of walking around in the school and who's where at what time. So that definitely makes me feel a little bit better.
See, that's even very different for me. I mean, when I was in high school, you could walk in the front door, and they may have locked, but but there were definitely we didn't have this barrage of cameras all over the place. So you've seen some real significant changes even from you were a freshman to your senior year here.
Yeah. Even in just like the lockdown procedures, like I remember in our freshman year of high school, we had a bomb threat emailed to the school on the 4th day of school. So my 4th day of high school ever, we have this bomb threat sent to the school, and it wasn't a drill. Like the administration hadn't verified that it wasn't false yet, so we went into a full lockdown, and that was really scary to be thrust into this huge school and not know anyone or know anything about the school, and to be experiencing this kind of like really scary event where we've had police, fire department, all these people pulling up to the school, and no one really knows what's going on. So like that kind of thing has diminished a little bit over time, which is good. 4th day of school, you said that was your 4th day? Yeah.
That's a tough way to start. There was this story this week out of Methuen. I don't know if this was on your radar at all, but there was somebody who was taken into custody, a 10th grader, 16-year-old, a couple years younger than you, who got arrested for making a threat to shoot his, I believe it was Methuen High. And the police made sure they went out of their way to credit 2 girls who heard this kid talking about something, and they told the principal, who told police, and they credited these 2 girls with leading to this arrest. I wonder, is there more of an app or more of an app to, I guess responsibility is maybe the word, but just not taking these things lightly between students. So, obviously in that case, 2 girls hear something, it was kind of a no-brainer. We're reporting this. Do you get that sense in the corridors that?
Yes, I definitely do. I think that because I know a lot of students that were interviewed after the Parkland shooting said that the perpetrator was someone who people would joke around being like, oh, if anyone was going to come and shoot up our school, it would have been him. We made jokes that he's a school shooter, he looks like a school shooter or something like that. And I know that there's definitely been that kind of thing, maybe just it's just what people talk about. It's just the kind of world we live in where people make jokes about that kind of thing. But it's scary to think that now any sort of little minor thing that you might think is suspicious, you can't help but think, what if that could actually happen? I don't want to take my chances.
Right. So you definitely get that sense where there's a community coming together as far as within those corridors that would do something about it if heard. Yeah. Well, if anything, that is a plus, I guess, as we go.
It's definitely reassuring to know that people are making sure that they're more wary of things and not taking comments like that as lightly, because I know that that's definitely been an issue with some other shootings in the past, is not seeing the warning signs.
Yeah, is there a do you find, the answer to this has to be yes, just because naturally even teachers are different, and their level of wanting to talk about these things is different. But do you find that, and you mentioned teachers it's the the elephant in the room, you have to talk about these shootings when they happen now. Do some specific classes cater more to that? I mean, is there like, you could almost dedicate a whole class to the, psychology behind these things and all that. Probably not something they'd want to do at the high school level.
Yeah.
But do you find that more teachers, maybe certain subjects, are more willing to address these issues? I mean, I'm sure maybe your gym teachers aren't necessarily talking about it as much. But I don't even know what the setting is. But you know where I'm going with that. Certain teachers, certain subjects that maybe are apt to dive into the issue of school violence and gun violence more.
Yeah, well, I know that I'm in senior year, you take civics and government as a history elective, which I honestly, it's probably one of my favorite classes I've taken in high school. I really like it. It's so interesting. We talk a lot about like policy, government policy, like court cases, that kind of thing, and that's definitely been a discussion in our class a few times. We haven't really shifted to, we're sort of talking about like old policies, like when the Constitution was written and all that kind of thing, but that can still apply to what's going on now, kind of like talking, I know there's a lot of discussion. It's kind of a hot button issue about like the Second Amendment and gun rights and that kind of thing. So we definitely apply that in class, and I know that like history classes still talk about it a little bit, maybe psychology, like that kind of stuff.
And also you mentioned getting into the politics of it all and all that. There is this level, and I'm noticing it more now, but it does seem like, and maybe this is why you continue to mention the Parkland kids too and how they kind of started this movement, but it does seem like this time around the Parkland kids are just, maybe it's just that level of anger that's really getting through, whatever it is, but it does seem like it's being heard by Washington. And I mean, all the TV shows, the morning shows, they're all putting these kids on, not only because they're loud and angry, they're also very well spoken and very well informed about this. And it does feel like this time around, maybe there's a level of being heard more, and that has to be reassuring to somebody your age, a senior about to leave the high school corridors. Yeah,
it definitely is more reassuring. I think that at this point, it has sort of transcended politics and partisan issues, and it's sort of become less of like a government, like a political problem. It's become less of a political problem and more of just an American problem. Like, gun violence at this level just does not happen in other countries. So I think that both parties, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. I think that everyone needs to take a good look at how our country is treating and talking about guns and sort of reevaluate the way we look at it to see what needs to be fixed.
And I wonder, as the organizer of this event that you had in Newburyport, again, Julia Tiernan, she helped organize the walkout at Newburyport High School for gun violence and stricter gun measures. That was last Thursday here in Newburyport, a day after the rest of the nation did it, because of course it was a nor'easter here in Newburyport, which we have another one of those coming as well overnight, tomorrow morning. But Julia, these things, it does seem like no matter whenever any of these rallies happen on whatever issue, somewhere along the line there's some controversy, even if it's something that everybody can get across, like everybody's against gun violence and school shootings, like that seems obvious, but there seems to always be some sort of other side where maybe somebody doesn't want to walk out or think it's wrong that you're walking out. Were you met with any bit of that along the way?
No one personally came to me with any sort of resistance or any sort of complaints, but I did hear a little bit kind of people, someone said this about me or someone said this about our walkout and this kind of thing. But I think that overall there was a pretty strong positive support, which was nice to hear, because I think that at this point it's not really political anymore. It's more that we're just tired of having to come to school and not feel safe. I think that no matter what political party you are, I think you should be entitled to be feeling safe in school.
And it seemed like that was the message really of the walkout was you did try to keep it maybe positive is the wrong word, but in that regard, you tried to make it inclusive to everybody. Was that one of your goals?
Yeah, that was definitely one of our goals. We emphasized that over and over again, especially during meetings and any social media posts we made, that this was not saying that, we want all guns in America to be taken away, or we hate Republicans because they think we should have guns in schools or anything like that. Like, that was not our intent or our message at all. I think that it was really just to say that students should be assembling and advocating for their own voice no matter what political party they are. And I think that just our generation should be politically active, because that's so important just as a citizen of the United States to be aware of like what's going on around you and voting and participating in politics and political discussions. And I think that that's really important. So I think that was kind of our message, was not necessarily of like a liberal or conservative or anything. I think it was just to tell people of all sides to sort of stand up and make sure that your voice is being heard.
And I think back, I mean, we never, there was certainly plenty to walk out on. You know, I'm sure there has been since the beginning of time. There's always issues that you can, put a voice to. But, I can't remember ever getting to the point where that sort of ground roots organized thing would happen when I was in high school. And it seems to be like you guys started this, you did it, you got the support, and it was so widespread that it just all happened. Is that kind of the nature of these things, how they're put together?
Yeah.
And I know it started from the national thing, obviously, but to put it together on the local level is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's nice to see that it's coming from the students and being advocated by the students. I know that it's like we did go to the administration, we did talk with a lot of teachers, but this was essentially student run and student organized, which was really, really cool to see, because we're kind of showing that we're tired of sort of sitting back and letting all the adults make the decisions for us. And we are coming into voting ages. I'll be 18 at the end of the summer, and I'll be able to vote. And I think that it's really important to let people who are of voting age in high school or coming into being able to vote, that they should be educated on what they're voting for, not necessarily just like making decisions based on what their parents might be telling them, but sort of forming your own opinion. And I think that that's like a huge part of what we wanted to be our message when we were organizing this. Absolutely.
Well, very interesting stuff here so far. Look at the clock. We're flying along again. We got one more segment left with Julia Tiernan as the show moves along very, very quickly. Don't forget, you can follow us at Joppa Afternoons on Twitter. That's at Joppa Afternoons, Joppa Afternoons on Twitter. I'll take a look here if you have any questions for Julia here in a second, because I did a bad job of that last week, answering your questions. Thank you all for tuning in here. We'll come back. We'll do one more segment with Julia. She helped organize the walkout here at Newburyport High School last Thursday, and is obviously very informed about this subject on a day when we have another school shooting in the nation, 3 critically hurt in Maryland, and hopefully everybody can get through that. But another school shooting in the United States, and Julia Tiernan is unfortunately a timely guest here on this particular day. Not unfortunately to have you, obviously, because you're great, but unfortunate circumstances, obviously. So we'll be right back. We'll get into a few more topics here. I could go a million different directions, so keep it here. You don't want to miss this. We'll be right back. It's Afternoon Drive on Joppa Radio. All right, and welcome back to Afternoon Drive here on WJOP Radio. My name is Drew Moholland. Hello to everybody on the television and stream as well. This is Afternoon Drive on WJOP Radio. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 o'clock. Kind of the goal of the show is to bring in interesting guests and relevant guests and who's ever making headlines or interesting, I guess, is the key word. Other than that, we certainly have that today with Julia Tiernan. She organized the walkout at Newburyport High School for stricter gun measures last week. And we talked to her on a day when there was another shooting in Maryland at a school in Maryland this afternoon, injuring 3. So at Great Mills High School in Maryland. So obviously a timely topic. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case too often that this is a timely topic. Julia, you had mentioned right before the break there something that caught my ear about how at your age, a senior in high school, everybody's about to get into voting age here. Really, if you're, not that you don't already start thinking about these issues critically, but you certainly do when it comes to voting time. And you certainly try to inform yourself even more than maybe you already are. And you were telling me off the air there that you got a little bit of a thing going on at school, and well, why don't you tell me about it?
Well, we were going to have this at the walkout, but the city council, the city clerk, we didn't get in contact with them in time, but we are looking to organize a voter registration drive for the school. We've done it before. Different groups have organized it before, where during lunch, people who are 18 can come and register to vote. And you can also pre-register online. If you have a driver's license, you can, at age 16 in Massachusetts, you can pre-register to vote, so that on your birthday, they send you all the paperwork and stuff, and you're already ready to go. Because I think that that's really important, making sure that your voice is heard in the polls, because that's the only place where it's really going to matter coming down to it. Like, conversations are a great way to get kind of your mind turning, but you really have to make a difference by voting.
You know, I was just while we were off the air, I was reading a little bit here on the on today's shooting, and I noticed that the kids at this Great Mills High School that were the victims today of this shooting, they did the same thing that you did last week. You know, thousands walked out and in support of the students in Parkland, Florida. And they did the same thing, and for some reason that must hit close to home too, that these were kids that did exactly what you did last week in support of another school, and now they are victims of a school shooting as well. Yeah,
it's sad to see that that's the reality we face, that you can have a school that's generally in support of kind of preventing this type of tragedy from happening, and then the next week it goes and happens at that exact school, which is really scary to think about. I know that I had a few people come to me before the walkout and voice their concerns that they were scared that if they walked out they would be shot, which is a very disturbing but real fact that we have to consider today. I definitely was a little nervous before, thinking having that in the back of my mind, but in the end you really just have to kind of get over it and keep moving and making sure that you're moving forward to prevent this from happening again.
What is the, when you talk about school safety, and we've got a lot into this during this interview, but what is the thing that, is it a school shooting? I mean, I can't imagine anything else. What is the thing that bothers you the most about walking into a school these days? I mean, I think about the mind of a high school student. You're thinking about the tests coming up. You're thinking about the I don't know, the prom coming up. You're thinking about your maybe a big sporting game, maybe a class you're struggling. There's a lot on the mind of a high schooler.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having these sort of things on your mind as you walk through the corridors. And again, I mean, we were when I was in school, it had happened before, but it just seems so more prevalent now. I just wonder what is that like on the mind of a, how old are you?
17.
17 years old.
Yeah.
So the mind of a 17-year-old. Put me in that a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think like all the things you said, tests, school, like sports, prom, all that kind of stuff is kind of normal teenage worries, normal teenage stress that I think that everyone experiences. And I think that one of those normal teenage stresses should not be worrying about whether or not you're going to be killed in school. I think that that's the main message that we have, is that we're tired of kind of having that in the back of our mind. And I think that students are just really sick of just kind of worrying, waiting for someone to walk in the door of their school and come in with a gun and try and hurt them. I think that just should not be our reality, that we are forced to accept.
That's such like a jarring statement to hear, that we shouldn't have to be worried about being killed in school, but it really is the truth of the matter. It's on the mind of the high schoolers these days, and I don't think my parents could really come to grips with that, because I don't think they were ever thinking about that sort of thing, but it is a lot different in 2018.
Yeah.
I guess, what would you say to the freshmen? We happen to have a great producer in here today who's a sophomore at your school. I know you know her, Lily Doucette. Hello, Lily. But she is, so she's a sophomore. I'm curious, like the freshmen and the sophomores and even the middle schoolers, like how would you encourage them to maybe do what you're doing? I'm not saying everybody has to get up there in front of a microphone and start, talking, because not everybody's meant for that. You're a special breed in that regard. But what would you say to get involved in these sort of things and these grassroots ground movements?
I think what you said, just getting involved, is a really big thing, making sure that you're educated, because I know one of the things that frustrates me most about this type of situation is that some people are very ignorant about it. They don't really understand maybe the gravity of the situation, or kind of like what people who are standing up against it are advocating for. And I think that that's just really frustrating, because they're the kind of people who are perpetuating this kind of violence, and like by not really understanding the issues and being vocal about it, that they're kind of just sitting back and allowing it to happen. So I think that my advice to freshmen, sophomores, even like middle schoolers, would just to be, make sure that you're educated, and that not your parents' opinions might not necessarily be your own opinions. And I think that just forming your own ideas about the world and kind of understanding the world is very important in this day and age.
You did the Women's March, you said, in January.
Yeah.
You led this school walkout last week. Obviously, you're drawn to these kind of activist issues. What makes you go in that direction, and is it something that you see a future in? You're going to go off to college. Maybe you're going to go off to college. You know what the plan is there?
Yeah.
Would you like to say where you're going?
Oh, yeah. Most likely Columbia College, Chicago.
Still deciding, though?
Yeah. Still up in the air, but that's most likely where I'm headed.
That's what you're leaning to?
Yeah.
So you're going to have all these options to get even more options than you had here at Newburyport to get involved into a lot of these things. Is that something we should be following you for in the future? A lot more of this kind of activism?
Hopefully so. It makes me really happy to kind of think that what I'm doing is helping people and sort of making other people aware of the world around them. I think that just kind of advocacy and sort of activism is really just trying to help educate other people on the ways of the world, not necessarily trying to sway their opinion, because I know that it's very hard to do that these days because everyone's very polarized in their politics. But I think that just kind of making them aware of the real facts of what's going on around them.
Absolutely. And senior year, I know you've obviously had a busier one than most people, it seems like. Certainly not taking in the senior slide moment. A lot going on for you. Have you been finding any time to get away from it all at all, and maybe look towards making that final college decision, or whatever it is you do as a senior?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big part of the theater department at our school. We just wrapped up our last musical, the winter musical Gypsy, so I was in that, and we're starting our spring play right now. We're doing the Rivals, and I'm head of costumes for that. So yeah, that's my kind of escape. I think that kind of thing, everyone should kind of have that little thing that you can go to sort of de-stress. And like theater, the people there are really supportive, and it's really cool to
open to the public. Can you go see these plays as the public?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. A lot of pressure.
Not too bad.
You're not bothered by pressure. I can kind of tell that. It's funny too, and I know we just have a couple minutes left, but I was struck by how not only on this interview, which you did a great job with here today, but that's not an easy thing. I don't think people realize how hard that is, especially on such a loaded topic like gun violence, to stand up in front of people and talk about this at a rally. It's a different kind of public speaking.
Yeah, definitely.
How'd you get yourself kind of together for that?
Well, I mean, I was a little nervous. Like right before we all walked out of the school, I was kind of looking at my friends, because I have a few people in my classes who helped organize it as well. So we're all kind of looking at each other, waiting for the 10 o'clock to roll around to kind of walk out of school. And at that point, I was very nervous just to see who would be there, what people would be saying, if they were going to be respectful or not. But then once I got up on the podium, it's just something that I'm so passionate about that I really don't feel nervous stating my opinion, because it's something I feel so strongly about that I think that I can kind of speak from the heart. And like speaking from the heart, you're never really nervous when you're doing that. So I think that that definremember helps me.
So you had those kind of pre-walkout jitters, and but they all went away once you started going. That's very good. You were very impressive. I remember watching that on, I think I first saw it on, maybe it came across on Twitter, or I forget where I saw it, but I saw it and I said, wow, we're going to have her on. She was a very impressive speaker.
Thank you.
And you did a great job organizing the whole thing. Julia Tiernan, thank you so much for coming on with us today. That's the fastest hour in radio, I say.
Thank
It goes
you.
by very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims. It looks like we have 2 shooting victims in Maryland. Both have survived for the moment. I think we're calling it critical injuries. It looks like the shooter may be dead. Reports are on this, so out of Maryland earlier today. So we'll keep monitoring that, of course, throughout the week on a day when there was another school shooting in the nation, this time in Maryland. Julia Tiernan, it was great to talk with you. She organized that Newburyport High School walkout last week, and senior year, and doing a great job with kind of these grassroots activism things. And Julia did a great job speaking in front of a pressure-filled rally there. Nothing easy about those kind of public speeches. So she did a great job last week, and she's encouraging everybody to get involved, because, of course, the school shootings is something that everybody can get behind and everybody can be against. That's kind of obvious. So very good job by Julia Tiernan, and a good job on this radio interview. Again, folks, we do this every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 3 o'clock. We'll do it again this Thursday. I guess I have to say, weather permitting again. We got another nor'easter coming in tomorrow that does look like it's going to stick around for a while. I do not think it's going to be as intense as last time as far as snow totals, although I guess you never know. This one has kind of changed already a few times. I think we're looking at like 5 to 10 in this neck of the woods, but not great for your late morning commute tomorrow, and definitely not great for your ride home from work tomorrow. So be safe if you're on the roads for the nor'easter. Hopefully it's the last one, because as Julie and I talked about earlier, it is the first day of spring, even though it does not feel like it out there. So happy spring, everybody. Here's a 4th nor'easter of March for you. So stay safe through the storm. Hopefully we'll see you Thursday. Again, if the storm's too bad, we might have to make some adjustments, because, sometimes the station closes. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully we see you Thursday. This has been Afternoon Drive. My name is Drew Moholland. Again, be safe through the storm, and spring will be here before we know it. Actual spring. I don't just mean it in title only. Warm weather coming 9 days from opening day for all you Red Sox fans. 9 days. Take that in. And again, final thought here. Our hearts go out to the community in Maryland, where there was another school shooting this morning. So keep them in mind here in the coming days. Hopefully the injured can pull through, and we will leave it at that here on a Tuesday afternoon. My name is Drew Moholland. This has been Afternoon Drive. Great discussion with Julia Tiernan. Big thanks to Lily Doucette, our producer on the radio side, David Kramer on the TV side. Thank you to everybody who watched on the TV and the stream. We will see you Thursday. Be safe through the storm. Bye-bye now.
Spirit of peace, well, I'll stand like a willow, blowing and free, so grateful to be in the spirit of grace. Well, I'll sing like a nightingale, take all my smallness released, so majestic and free in the spirit of grace. I'll dance like a sparkling stream and see God in every face. God's grace, God's grace in the spirit of peace. And I am open to the miracle, the miracle, the miracle that I am today. Open to the miracle, the miracle, the miracle that births a new way. And I am open to the miracle, the miracle, the miracle that I am today. Open to the miracle, the miracle, the miracle that births a new way. In the spirit of peace, peace, grace, and ease. In the spirit of peace. Billy Gray rode into Gantry back in '83. There he did meet young Sarah McCrae. The wild rose of morning, the pale flower of dawning, herald of springtime and his young life that day. Sarah, she could not see the daylight of reality. In her young eyes, Billy bore not a flaw. Knowing not her chosen one was a hired gun, wanted in Kansas City by the law. Then one day, a tall man came riding across the Badlands, lying to the north of New Mexico. He was overheard to say he was looking for Bill Gray, a ruthless man and a dangerous outlaw.
he fled towards the old church there on the outskirts, thinking he'd climb to that old steeple bell. But a rifle ball came flying face down. He lay dying there in the dust of the road where he fell. Sarah